That was a long walk. Yada numbly gunnery banja. Ninda behind me near barely. How are we this morning? Sounds like we'll slack after that long weekend. How are we guys? We are the Tribal Experience Aboriginal Dancers. We're here to give you a welcome to the country. We're going to welcome you today with a blessing song and a welcoming song called Malacha. To welcome you and a good nuru. Yo lani yagara nuru. Yo lani yagara Malacha. Yo hey. Danare yagara Malacha na Malacha yagara danare hamyatna malaranga nuru hamyatna malaranga nuru danare yagara Malacha Malacha yagara danare up danare yagara Malacha na Malacha yagara danare hamyatna malaranga nuru hamyatna malaranga nuru danare yagara Malacha Malacha yagara danare up danare yagara
I would just like to introduce two incredible ladies to do our welcome address. Auntie Mary Doctor is the chairperson of Housing Queensland. She's a national leader and advocate in First Nations housing. She's the deputy chairperson of the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Association, the chairperson of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland, and she's also the current general manager of Umpi Karumba Brisbane, which is a nurse registered Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community housing organisation. Accompanying her is Auntie Angie Akee, who's the chairperson of ABIS Housing here in Queensland. So Auntie Angie is an active advocate for the better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the housing, youth, disability. Just check that again, thank you. Angie is the chair of ABIS Community Cooperative Society Limited in Townsville and brings extensive executive management. Just check that again. Across the housing, community care, legal and health sectors. She's also the current chairperson of the North Queensland Land Council and the deputy chairperson of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland. If I can ask you both to come up.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome today, and thank you for being here. And thank you to the performers, Tribal Experiences. It's always good to hear and see them perform for us and our gathering today. There's a few people that this is sort of like Auntie Angie and I were sort of packing it up here. We've done it a couple of times, but it still frightens us, eh? So we tend to look at each other, not anybody else. Yeah. We want to acknowledge the Yagara people and the Turrbal people as the traditional custodians of Meanjin, also known as Brisbane, and the lands on where our office is located and where we meet today. We also pay our respects to elders, past, present, and to any First Nations, to all First Nations people with us today. On behalf of our peak body, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland, we're really, really thrilled to be here on stage today and welcome you to Housing National Conference. That's years, and a conference has attracted about 250 delegates from all over Australia, and a shout out to Auntie Eileen over there. Some of you are the people in specialised fields. Others are important, integral frontline workers, but all of you are all important. Amongst this year's delegates are community housing providers, housing industry professionals, peak bodies, health professionals, government employees, academics, researchers, community leaders and elected leaders. And I want to acknowledge the mayors of Palm Island, Woorabinda and Hopevale. They're here today to give us support. I also want to thank the board of Umpi Karumba for your guidance and support always. You know, you let me run feral sometimes, and this is what happens. The staff of our state body, Neil, and the staff, but also my fellow directors. And there's one champion that I want to acknowledge here today, and that's my husband, Russell. Thanks, mate.
Waramuli. I've been involved, I suppose, in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander affairs for a long, long time. But I stand here before you as both of us, as strong women and mothers who need to take this journey forward in terms of housing our people. I also want to acknowledge on behalf of Torres Strait Islanders that are sitting in the audience as well, or descendants of Torres Strait Islanders, and acknowledge that we are on your country, the traditional owners, the custodian of this country, that we are here to participate. And I also want to acknowledge all the non-Indigenous people that are here. Both of us acknowledge your presence and the contribution that you will be making, and that you will be listening to the issues around Aboriginal housing in Queensland and of course all over the country. Common to all of you is a genuine interest and a commitment to improving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders housing outcome in Australia. We are honourable, proud to establish and deliver this important conference on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander housing. I just want to elaborate there. We all have a history. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have a history in this country. As most of you would know, that we've been forcibly removed, our grandparents and mothers. We lived in humpies. We have a history, but now we're here to make a change. And that change will be in the betterment of all, both Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islanders and non-Indigenous people of this country. You're here because you have an interest, and we're here that we have some common grounds that we all can walk the walk and talk the talk. I also want to acknowledge our professional and dedicated staff members that are here as well, and especially under the leadership of our CEO, Neil. This conference is about sharing information, creating conversation and networking. History tells us that together we can achieve more. And like I said, this isn't about individual organisation. This is about us all working together and having government department listening to our storyline. History tells us that we can learn from mistakes. Well, we made no mistakes. Colonisation made the mistake in terms of coming to our country. History tells us that we have a solution to overcome challenge. And that challenge today is about getting access and equity so that we can improve better housing for our people. Some of you are people in specialised field. Oh, sorry, I'm reading Mary's paper there.
Yeah, we do this sometimes, eh?
We're a team.
That's right.
Strong black women. The next 2 days has something for each and every one of you. We hope you enjoy what we have to put together. Once again, on behalf of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland, we welcome you here and we welcome your contribution to the future of Aboriginal housing. Bye.
So I would now like to, for our opening address, ask Neil Willmett, who's the CEO of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland, to come up on stage. So Neil is a highly experienced executive across a range of corporate, government and not-for-profit entities. He's a national leader in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander housing, health, economic development and public administration. He is known as a leading thinker and for his work in strategy. Well, he is. He's a leader and a figure. Did I? Can we make a commitment? Every time I make a mistake over the next 2 days, I want you to stay right there and you keep me to account, Arnie. Neil is also a member of the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council. He's an Aboriginal man with connections to the Wanyi people of the Gulf and Carpentaria and the Kuku Yalanji people of far north Queensland. Thanks, Neil.
Well, also good morning to everyone, and I'll start off by acknowledging traditional owners on the land where we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. And just listening to Tim and Jono this morning talk, and Jono play the didge and the dances, it just makes you realise how important culture is to us and the fact that we haven't lost it, and that for many of us we still practice it, and it's an important part of us, whether it's a welcome or a song or a hello or a goodbye. It's important to all of us. Murray had introduced me. My name is Willmett, and I have the privilege to be the CEO of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing, which is the organisation that's bringing the conference to you. For us, it's an important piece in our work plan, and we run it every 2 years. And I'll talk about that briefly in a minute, but I just wanted to start off by just acknowledging Auntie Mary and Auntie Angie, two very dynamic women, and thank you for your contributions and also your leadership and mentoring while I've been in this role. Your wisdom and your influence at the national level is significant, and I think for a lot of people, they hear names and sometimes they don't see the work that goes on behind the scenes, so I just want to acknowledge you, so thank you. Maybe a round of applause for those two ladies, so thank you. To be honest with you, I stand here really humbled today to be in front of you. It's a massive task to bring a conference like this together, but importantly, it's around the issues that we're going to talk about. And the next 2 days, many of you have bestowed some trust on our organisation to deliver something where you'll walk away from it learning or taking something with you that you could apply in your jurisdictions. And we don't take that lightly. It's been a lot of time in the planning, and we just want to thank you for that. The reason why we're standing here today, and for me as an Aboriginal man, is there's a lot of sacrifices that were made by people before me and certainly generations that went before me. And we can't forget those sacrifices, and it's not about having a roof over your head, it's about the way that they were treated and the lives that people lived and under the laws that they lived. So the stuff that we're doing is resetting the conversation, and the conversation that we're talking about over the next couple of days is housing. You've heard me say that this is the second time we've run the conference. We're fortunate enough to run it in November 2021, just down the road, on a spring day, which was a beautiful day, not unlike today. But it makes you realise when we live in the comfort of coming into a closed-in shelter, where we come in, where everything's provided for us, and we have all this access to these incredible facilities, that for some people in Australia, in 2024, we still don't have those opportunities. And our big thing is around addressing that and accelerating the change. We can no longer wait for things to happen and expect a different outcome when we continue to do the same things. So you'll hear over the next couple of days about a few things. And the conference is more about just giving people hope. We've moved beyond hope. It's like many years ago, people would talk to me about jobs. We weren't talking about jobs, we were talking about careers and being CEOs, not just a job. So our thinking is accelerated. And it's the same for the housing stuff. The stuff that we've been talking about for a long period of time needs to be accelerated so the outcomes are much better. Today we're going to have a conversation more than just about hope. We're going to try to influence the national conversation, the policy and the practice that impacts on First Nations housing in this country. Our focus is on a couple of things. One is looking and talking about addressing the issue of homelessness that is still at a ridiculous rate that you're going to hear about a little bit later. We've got to talk about this conversation of stop this nonsense of overcrowding in our communities, where we know it causes a number of problems and we've got to address it, and we'll be talking about that. And the other thing that we'll be talking about significantly is around home ownership, as we see more First Nations people move into home ownership, and about how we can accelerate that. At times, there's been irresponsible leadership within this country, talking about issues that are important to us, but not really having any genuine commitment to the stuff that we need to see done. So I'm hoping over the next couple of days you're going to hear some of that. So it moves beyond poorly informed and poor leadership to some stuff that's going to be a bit more aspirational. Things are changing, and that's a good thing. It's not all doom and gloom. We have seen significant changes over a period of time and in a short period of time. But what I will say to you is that we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. But know this, I'm telling you right now, they will be met. And this generation will ensure that they are met. We can no longer wait because we have waited too long. So why don't we get started? I'm going to finish off by just talking about a couple of things that you're going to hear today and tomorrow. You're going to hear from some thrilling speakers. They're speakers who have lived and breathed some of the stuff that we want to know about. They're people who have made a change and contributed to society. Along with a number of people who are here in the room today to listen, to learn, and to network. And I encourage that too. It's not just purely about listening to who's on stage. Murray will tell you about some breakout rooms and things that we're doing a little bit later, but there's an opportunity for all of you to network and link with people that you may not have seen or that you want to talk to. You hear from people who will talk about community housing, who will talk about homelessness, who will talk about what we're doing in the community to increase the number of people in stable, secure and culturally appropriate accommodation. You'll also hear about the issues of regional housing and this challenge that we have in terms of getting people housed in not only regional Australia but also remote Australia. Many of you will have a deep understanding of the issues. For some of you it'll be stuff that you've heard before, for some of you it'll be new stuff. But I will say to you, keep an open mind about what you hear and use that to fill your toolbox so that you've got some tools to take forward with you. I encourage you to look at the program booklet. For people who may not be aware, it actually sits in the back of your lanyard if you haven't seen it, and it outlines all the speakers, and it also gives you the speakers' names in the back so you know who's speaking today if you want to see them or you want to have a yarn with them. Finally, I just want to close by just saying that I want to acknowledge the Queensland Government for their financial contribution to run this conference. For a couple of years, we were formed in 2021, we had the notion of running a conference to raise the awareness of housing issues so that collectively we can get people in the room and through thought leadership we can change the conversation and get people informed about the challenges that are in front of us. And we've done that very well, and we've formed a great partnership with the Queensland Government. So I thank you and Danielle on behalf of your colleagues in the Queensland Government. We thank you for your contribution. Together we're all working together to overcome the challenges that are in front of us around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander housing. For people who may not feel that it's happening fast enough, trust me when I say this, that we see you and we hear you. There is a lot of stuff. It's sometimes hard steering a boat, and it's a bit like that sometimes when we're in Aboriginal housing to make the differences that we need to do. And they won't happen overnight, but they will happen, and I give you that guarantee that they'll happen. I think that's enough from me. You're going to hear from me in the next couple of days, but what I might do is just take this opportunity to invite Danielle up onto the stage. Murray will do an introduction so you know who Danielle is, but I wish you all the best for the conference over the next couple of days, and I hope you get something out of it. Thank you.
I'm a bit shorter than the others who have been up here. Thanks, Murray. And thank you, Auntie Mary and Auntie Angie and Neil for the wonderful welcoming addresses. I'd also like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners on the land we meet today, the Turrbal and the Yagara peoples, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. It's a real pleasure, looking out across this room, what a great turnout, what a great opportunity to come here with members of such a committed, enthusiastic sector to gather and hear about the unique opportunities and housing experiences of First Nations Queenslanders and the aspirations that exist, and to share ideas for continued progress towards closing the housing gap. I've been taking a look at the program, and I'm also very excited about some of the distinguished keynote speakers that we get to hear from today, but also the conversations, as Neil was saying, those specific conversations that you might have. I'm excited to be able to meet with some elders, various community leaders, dignitaries, and guests, many who have travelled a long way to be here today. So it's been 2 years now since Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland hosted the Housing First Nations Conference. Since then, there's been significant work that's occurred across government and the sector in partnership with communities and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland to continue to improve housing and homelessness outcomes for First Nations Queenslanders. Earlier this year, the Homes for Queenslanders plan was released. It's a plan for a fair and sustainable housing system for better housing outcomes across the state, both now and for the future. It's got a really ambitious aim to deliver 1 million new homes by 2046. And a part of that is also delivering 53,500 new social homes across our state. Critically, A minimum of 1,200 of those homes will be delivered in First Nations communities with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander local councils. Then in April, the Our Place, a First Nations Housing and Homelessness Roadmap to 2031 and the Our Place Action Plan from 2024 to 2027 was released. Those plans set out a vision and a direction to improve housing outcomes for First Nations peoples living in Queensland over the next 8 years. Importantly, Our Place was a co-designed piece of work. It was developed in partnership, in very close partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland, but critically, it was informed by numerous sessions right across the state with direct voices of First Nations peoples, communities and organisations. It aims to help shape a fairer housing system and contribute towards closing the housing gap for First Nations peoples and communities by 2031. There are 27 actions within that action plan, so we've got 4 years to deliver those actions to really accelerate the progress towards closing the gap by delivering really impactful whole of sector responses which will work across the entire housing and homelessness system. That plan is backed by $61.3 million, including a $10 million investment under Homes for Queenslanders, specifically to help First Nations people achieve home ownership aspirations. Our Place begins with and continues our commitment to shared decision-making with First Nations communities in Queensland. The department is reframing its relationship with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples through a new way of working. This places First Nations peoples at the centre of how housing and homelessness responses and solutions are designed and delivered. I'm very proud of my team, and many of them are here in the room today, and the work that they are doing together with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Housing Queensland and the communities to drive whole of system responsibility and accountability for First Nations housing and homelessness outcomes, guided by First Nations leadership and shared decision making. To support that shared decision making and delivery of Our Place, the department, together with the peak body, is in the process of establishing the Queensland First Nations Housing and Homelessness Partnership. This partnership will provide the governance structure to empower First Nations peoples to share that decision making with government. It will provide strategic direction and guide the implementation of the Our Place Action Plan with a focus on cultural perspectives. But very importantly, it will keep us accountable. It will make sure that we are on track to deliver as we have committed to. It will make sure that future policy recommendations and investment decisions are considered with a First Nations perspective and direct voice. And it will absolutely inform Queensland's participation in the national bodies, so the Closing the Gap Housing Policy Partnership, to make sure that we connect the state and Commonwealth First Nations housing and homelessness priorities. Co-chaired by the department and the peak body, membership will include a majority of First Nations peoples and will incorporate broad representation from right across our state. In Queensland, there's been significant steps taken over the past 5 years to provide support to Indigenous community housing organisations and to strengthen the Indigenous community housing sector. We've partnered with the peak to ensure active, structured and supported collaboration between the Indigenous community housing sector and government. But there's lots more to be done. I acknowledge Neil's comment before that sometimes progress looks slow. We're very conscious of that, and we really want to fire up the actions in Our Place and really deliver the change that we need. Under Our Place, the work with the sector will continue to grow the size, viability and sustainability of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled sector to deliver the housing and homelessness outcomes. Some of those actions are about delivering a dedicated Indigenous community housing maintenance and upgrades program. We need to map the First Nations housing sector's portfolio and services to increase the visibility of the sector and to reveal opportunities for more First Nations community housing and support services. We need to look at the national regulatory system for community housing and how that operates and what the barriers are for Indigenous community housing organisations, and how do we knock those barriers out. And we absolutely need to continue working with the peak and expanding the capacity and capability to deliver partnership and sector strengthening outcomes. The department is also really focused on delivering place-based partnerships to bring together local leaders, organisations and funding partners through that community-led approach and coordinated investment to ensure that we address specific needs. A particular example of the ways of working and that enablement of the place-based partnerships is the continued focus working with councils on local housing plans and looking at how we address those systemic barriers that might be limiting that place-based decision making. There's also a focus on developing 10-year strategic capital plans. What's the roadmap to deliver more housing in communities? What do the councils, what does the community want that to look like? In order to address both immediate, short-term, emerging, but those longer-term housing challenges as well, and looking at what that diversification of supply might be for that particular location. Lastly, at the national level, we've been working very actively to ensure that Queensland has the best outcomes through Commonwealth's range of funding opportunities targeting housing for First Nations Australians. It's a busy space. There's a lot going on at the national level, and we will continue to advocate for First Nations outcomes and funding opportunities. Under the National Agreement on Social Housing and Homelessness, the Australian Government is providing about $1.8 billion to Queensland over the next 5 years as a contribution to social housing and homelessness responses. While there's no dedicated funding for First Nations housing under that agreement, there are the commitments through the National Agreement on Closing the Gap that are reflected in the housing agreement. That includes the implementation of the priority reforms of formal partnerships and shared decision-making, building the community-controlled sector, transforming government organisations and shared access to data. And again, I can assure you that there's a really strong focus on what we are doing to actually let those commitments live and breathe and how we embody them and make sure that they're not just words on a page. Homes for Queenslanders and Our Place outline our ongoing commitments to improving housing and homelessness outcomes for First Nations Queenslanders. We're not doing this alone, we're very conscious of that. All levels of government, the housing and homelessness sector, industry, peak bodies and service providers need to work together and, most importantly, be guided by community and First Nations peoples to accelerate the progress we need towards closing the housing gap. The department is committed to working with you all to drive those outcomes and to drive reform to create a fairer, safer housing system and future for First Nations people in Queensland. And it's conferences such as this that really provide that valuable opportunity to come together, to share ideas, to learn from each other, to identify opportunities that we need to lean into harder and make sure that we're getting the progress that we need. And very importantly, to continue to grow the relationships and the partnerships. So again, thank you everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to share our commitments, but most importantly, I'm very much looking forward to the dignitaries and the speakers that are in the rest of the conference. Thank you.